Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Monday, December the 8th. And welcome to our commentary. Well, before I get to the stories of the day, I just want to remind you I have a post over at the American Thinker this morning. You can check it out, americanthinker.com. It's on the right-hand side. And I'm talking about this absolutely ridiculous position that the Democrats are taking with respect to these so-called boat people, these narco boats that we are blowing up in the Caribbean or wherever these people happen to be. And it's a ridiculous position because once again, it puts them on the wrong side of an issue where most Americans see the big picture and they go, yeah, it's okay to blow them up. First of all, these ships are flying without a flag. It's unidentified ships. They're loaded with, obviously, they're not traveling to the next island to do Christmas shopping or distributing gifts or something like that. It's obvious that they're carrying narcotics. Now, Democrats are getting into a debate as to whether it's fentanyl or cocaine. Honestly, so what difference does it make? I mean, it still is intended to come to the United States. But it's such a silly thing to get excited about with so many other things that they should be battling about. To pick a fight like this is really as idiotic as arguing over boys playing with girls or men undressing in girls' rooms, bathrooms. I mean, it is the kind of battle that you have to ask yourself, why are the Democrats doing this? What is driving them to do this? And the only answer I can think of is that the base of the party is moving further and further to the left, and that they have to take everything that Trump does, they have to do the opposite. That's the only thing I can explain. It's the only possible thing I can explain, especially in light of what we saw during the Obama administration, even to some extent under the Biden administration and Clinton administration, when the president used the military to target specific enemies. I mean, during the Obama administration, we used drones to go after so-called terrorist heads or leaders. And in some cases, we actually killed a lot of civilians doing that. Everybody remembers the incident, and I talk about this in my post, the incident of a young man. One of these guys was with his son, and we ended up killing the son as well. And sometimes we would end up killing his wife as well. So it's an absolutely insane position that the Democrats are taking. It just doesn't make any sense. Why they're doing it? Well, it's got to be political, that they're getting a lot of pressure from their base to do this. There's also another theory, and I'll mention it before we go to the other topics. And I talked about this when that video came out about the illegal orders. I think a lot of Democrats may be vaccinating themselves, if you will, against a primary by saying, look, I'm just as anti-Trump as you are, so don't primary me. And I think that could be what's driving all of this, that they're positioning themselves so far away from Trump so that if somebody wants to primary them, they can say, well, no, I hate Trump as much as you do. And maybe that's the position. But otherwise, this whole debate doesn't make any sense to me. The president has the authority to do this. There's more than enough examples of this to do it. So it's not a question of presidential authority. Now, if the Democrats want to have a debate about whether the president uses the military unilaterally too much, well, that's a different debate. And I don't mind doing that debate. But on this one, I mean, this is a bad issue for them, but they keep on doing it. Well, there's a story today in the New York Times that apparently President Biden was warned by some of his people, advisors or whatever, that the policy on the border was going to be a big mistake and would eventually blow up in his face and bring about some of the problems that we're seeing on the border right now and in the country as well, the chaos and so on brought about by open borders. And apparently he was warned about it, and he didn't, I guess, listen to his advisors. That's sort of what the impression you get from the New York Times article, which, by the way, there's a great summary of that article over at Hot Air by one of the writers over there, David Strum. Great analysis of it, and he really goes into the article and it's just great analysis. I would check it out, hotair.com and David Strum. wrote the analysis of that article. Great analysis. But, basically, I guess they told President Biden, hey, don't do this. He didn't listen. Now, that's what the article says. Now, I honestly, I've come to the conclusion that a lot of what happened during the Biden administration that President Biden was not really on top of. And I'm not making excuses for Biden. I'm simply saying that when you see the auto pen and you see other things, you kind of begin to wonder if he even knew what was going on. Because when you look at the record, when you look at Joe Biden's record over the years, I mean, this was not he's not really a liberal when it came to the border. He was not really a liberal when it came to a lot of these other things. So the idea that he would be the president who would open the border even more than President Obama, because President Obama, if you remember, deported 3 million people. But the idea that Biden would turn out to be this kind of a president, it leads me to believe, and I really believe this now more than ever when you see the auto pen and some of these other things that are going on. I don't think he knew what was going on. I think he was just, putting his signature, if he even did that, on some of these documents. And I think the people around him were running the country, not him. So not making excuses for the Biden administration, but I would not be surprised if he really didn't know what was going on, because it's just hard for me to believe. I just saw a video a day or so ago of then Senator Biden recommending to then President Bush, this is back in 1989, I believe, that he should go after these cartels with the military, basically what Trump is doing now, that he should do this. And that was him back then, when he was tough on lots of things like crime and putting more police on the streets and all of that. That was kind of the old, more centrist Biden, if I could put it that way. But ever since he became president, I don't know what kind of a deal he made to become president. But the bottom line is that that's not how he governed. And on the border, he apparently did not take the advice, according to the article, of his advisors. And look what we got. We got a very bad situation. And by the way, I have a post about that coming out tomorrow, where I talk about what that open border madness has done to the attitudes of a lot of Americans about immigration, how a lot of Americans are basically fed up with the topic, not because they hate immigrants. They don't hate immigrants, but because it was handled in such a chaotic way that a lot of people are saying, come on, we cannot run a country in that fashion. But anyway, good thing to think about. Good thing to think about. How much did President Biden actually know? How much did he approve directly? I don't think he approved a lot of things, and that's just my point of view. Well, in other words, he didn't approve a lot of things. Some people were approving it for him. That's what somebody else was running the country, not Joe Biden, the man that was elected president. Well, there's a big story today in Texas. It should be happening later this evening, and that is that Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett will be announcing that she's running for the U.S. Senate in the Senate primary, of course, which will be next March. She'll be running at the moment against James Salarico, because we just learned today that Congressman Alred, who lost to Senator Cruz in 2024 or 2024, who lost to Senator Cruz in 2024, he lost big by about 9 points. He's apparently going to be running for the Congress, not the Senate. So it's going to come down to Jasmine Crockett, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, and State Representative James Salarico. Here's what I think is going to happen. I think that Jasmine Crockett is going to generate a lot of money. She's going to be loaded with money from all parts of the country, because she really represents where the Democrats are. On the other hand, James Salarico is going to try to present himself as kind of a more moderate bipartisan. That's not really his record, but that's how he's going to present himself. And I think Jasmine Crockett will win the primary. I really do. And she will be the Democrat nominee in 2028. Of course, who is she going to be running against? We don't know. But she's not a very good candidate for a place like Texas. I don't know what the Democrats are thinking when they are nominating somebody like that, who is basically a single district candidate who can win one district. But when you get out of that district, not going to go well for her in Texas. So we'll see what happens. But she's supposed to be announcing today. Let's see. What happens. Just a little bit of on this day in history. 1941, December the 8th. President Roosevelt went to the Congress and asked for a declaration of war. He got it against Japan, and I think eventually it was expanded to include Germany and so on. But here's the interesting thing. That was the last time that an American president got a declaration of war to get into a military conflict. Ever since then, we've had resolutions, in some cases unilateral action, but a formal resolution or a formal declaration like the Constitution calls for has not happened in 84 years, ever since the Pearl Harbor on this day in 1941. So it's an interesting commentary because, a lot of people want to believe that maybe we have, or the president has too much unilateral power when it comes to the military. And that's a debate that maybe we can have. It has nothing to do with these votes, by the way, but it is a debate that maybe we should have in the country as to whether we should go back to the more strict interpretation in the Constitution of a declaration of war rather than resolutions or relying on this or relying on that. It's an interesting debate, and I wouldn't mind having it. But, it has nothing to do with these votes, but it is a debate that we should be having. So it was on this day in 1941, President Roosevelt went to the Congress, got his declaration, and that's the last time that we got into a war with a declaration of war by the Congress. It's fascinating. Now, we've had resolutions like Iraq and Afghanistan, the Gulf War back in 1981 with the first Bush, but not like that one back in 1941 on the day after Pearl Harbor. Well, thank you for listening. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas. Thank you for your comments, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye, everybody.